Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
I was just asking Jason, how is it that he was promoted to Engineering USA Prepares 5 days a week? And there was a little pause there, and I said, I know. There was a lottery, and you didn't have a ticket. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Broadcasting 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And if you'd like to call us, that's the time to call us. And the number is 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up, 712-770-9418. 712-770-9418, provided by Global Star. Thursdays, Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
The wind up, it's just outside, ball four. And when we talked this morning, you wanted to know what to talk about, and I said, I don't have anything to talk about. I do now.
So we're done.
It changes every minute. You know what I mean? From I don't have a clue to what the. I have decided I need an army of ghostwriters. Right now, I'm serious. Now, let me explain. I am a writer. I never dreamed I would turn out to become a writer. It just happened. And it started with Boeing when I came out of grad school. They taught me how to write scientific writing. That means fog index. Now, I'm not a writer. I have a degree in English literature, some brief history. In 1960, when I was 16 years old, I snuck out of class every day to go down to the Seattle World's Fair and sneak in some way, because I didn't have any money, to watch Sir Laurence Olivier play Hamlet or Macbeth. And I saw all of it when I was 16 years old. So that by the time I went to college, I met Ruth Slonim, and I have an actual degree in English literature, as well as physics and mathematics. And so I spent one summer doing summer school so I could get it all done. And I write every day something. And I had some wonderful magazines that gave me deadlines, which meant they got done rather than sort of kind of maybe. I had a deadline, and so you sent it out, in half sail with a little luff in the sail. Didn't matter. It flew. And what happened next was that over the years, I discovered I have a single manuscript for every single year out of graduate school, and at least 4 to 6 deep articles for each year as well. So that includes things like the SEAL reports. Okay, the SEAL reports. There's 12 reports, and what I did is I gave those to Mahala to organize, and she did. So we got the chapters all laid out on which report it goes in which thing, and then she died. And so there's Dr. Lenny Time did an edit on I've got so many titles going on I can't even the Marshall Papers, and the Marshall Papers was done by 12 mathematicians looking at Bob Marshall's works and then adding psychological and insight mathematically. And there's 12 chapters there. And then it goes to the Spook Central and the work I did with MRU. All of these different manuscripts are things I've done and then didn't complete. I went off and started writing another one because each year there was something new going on, like aliens or whatever. And yes, there's a book on my experiences at Broom Lake. Yes. And so what do? I want to write something new right now, right this moment, how the curfew. What I'm doing this moment is I'm opening a school tomorrow called Schweitzer University, and I've done 3 videos this week on how to build from scratch with just PVC and so on, an aquaculture system that is a closed system in case you need to go down into a bunker. Now, with lights and all of it. And I did it in a manner to teach first graders how to do it, because first graders got sent home school early this year and probably will not start in September like school normally was because of the curfew and all the rest of this nonsense that's going on. And where does that put me? I'm Malcolm in the middle without any way to go. Which way do I go? Do I continue with my Albert Schweitzer or go back and finish old projects? I need an army of ghostwriters, and I'm available. This is how you get to have access to me, because you may have daily questions. What about this? Do that. No problem with doing that. But I need somebody to do that. Okay, while I'm doing all of that, I need a headmaster. You have volunteered to be the headmaster, and that's perfect. You're Dumbledore. However, what I need is someone full-time managing that thing. For example, right now, a little whorehouse girl, what's her name? Did a little whorehouse in Texas. Dolly Parton was going to show a movie, her reading to children, and that got canceled in all the different theaters because of the curfew, that quarantine, and so now she's having it done through all the public libraries. What a wonderful spokesperson to possibly help Albert Schweitzer set up a trend. Not Albert Schweitzer, but that concept of every library doing video and audio for children at home. Now, she would probably go for it. Who's going to make that presentation? I've got a list of things that could happen that I can't do it all. It's not possible. And what I do best in the team is write. And you let me go, and I will produce 20-year ahead of time things, because this school is going to be put together before the quarantine even came about. The idea was that children are our single most important natural resource, and they don't do shop, they don't do home economics, they don't do mechanical drawing, they don't do automotive, they don't do anything for those kids anymore. And we've talked about it in multiple shows that these are going to be the people that take over the earth and save it, not us. And we need that. Now, one of my team said, I have a lot of concern about your teaching metaphysics with the reputation of adrenochromosome and, vampirism and drinking baby blood and rituals. So what I'm doing today is I'm writing up a history of where I came from Theosophical Society on down to Rosicrucian, and then how I got into, starting with neo-pagan, witchcraft, into magic, high magic, and now I'm into something I can't even explain that has to do with self-empowerment, which is what the child already has. And so I need help. And I don't need to talk to people. I need people to do things that I can't do that need to be done to make the vision happen correctly. And that's my first plea outward. I'm being told now by Leo David, who put my thing together, we filmed it for children, every single process, from taking dirt and how you mix it in a wheelbarrow on down, visual. And we've made videos that we're ready to open the doors, and I can't open tomorrow. I'm going to do the ritual tomorrow because I got the wrong shank size from Weimar. Drill. I said, drill a hole. I got the wrong shank size. So these are constant little setbacks that lose the timing effect that I'm real good at. And you can't, anticipate these things. And the reason I want to open May 1st is because before light, these were the Catholic tides of ancient that dictated when you did not do things. And May 1st is when you turn the water ditch on. Newsflash, May 1st is when you start new ventures. Usually it's depicted with a bunch of vessel virgins dancing around a big pole. Ha, ha, ha. Now, Samhain is when you get naked. It's all done, and you leap over flames because the harvest is over. That's Halloween. Now, I can tell you that this is important timing. I can't tell you why from a physics point of view. But I can tell you that it has to do with the pineal gland. The pineal gland, for example, the third eye, was to regulate the body for seasonal changes. It atrophied, of course, when we started using halogens and lights, and it wasn't needed. It doesn't function as correctly. However, that's just one thing it does. It also regenerates nerve tissue in the neural cavity as opposed to glial cell, and why man now has limitations. Our technologies are in conflict with our immortality, for example, and why man is much older and lived longer than we realized, than we do today. We're, 120 years today, whereas back in Mesopotamia, da-da-da-da-da. Now, with that all said, I have a vision that the children are brighter than adults. Adults are more experienced, but that means that by definition, they're also more limited because they know what they can't do. And that's what a child does not know, and that's where the magic lies, is not knowing and working more from the moment. And we don't understand that concept yet because we think science has all the answers, and it's as limited as religion, and that's why we have two brains. I need help. There.
Okay, well, I've got a... okay, well, I have an answer for you.
Oh.
Gwyneth Isaacs is a... No. Gwyneth Isaacs is a brilliant writer. And, of course, she's with us every week on Wednesday. She was on yesterday. She has written a number of books, and they are as good as the finest novels written by anybody, and I'm serious about that. And she'd love to be a ghostwriter. I know she would. And also, she wants to be an instructor at Albert Schweitzer University in the area of common law. So we just connected two dots. What do you think about that?
Okay, she's hired. Let's go to page 17. Who's going to help her finish my, and your manuscripts while we do new ground? Because new ground needs to be pulled right now because old ground is no longer fertile. Oh, that's a metaphor. Excuse me. We'll need someone to teach Gregory Bates it. The people don't get that.
Okay, so, Rick, how do you want them to contact you? The ghostwriter army that we're putting together right now.
Yeah, what I wished was, have them all call Grace Thorne there. That'll get even with her. And then Grace
all right, well, think about that.
To try to contact me. Thank you, Grace, by the way, for that wonderful card. Just a few days ago,
we'll be right back.
I called you this morning, and Julie and I were going to do a little rain dance and want to know when you're coming back out here. I would love to have people helping me take those phone calls and organizing it for me so that when they need me, it isn't. See, the problem is people don't want to help me. What they want to do
Rick, we're in a commercial break.
To me because I'm helping them.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. RichardAllenMiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, so we were going into a break when you were describing how you would like this information to get back to you. Those who are interested in becoming ghostwriters for Albert Schweitzer University, the new university that you have founded. How do you want them to do that?
Okay. 2 people have called me that said they can't even hear us on radio, by phone or not. I'm being blocked at every orifice. When I try to reach out or say anything, somehow my phone will mess up. Right now, I've had 2 people just call me right this minute telling me they can't hear me on the radio. How does that work, Vincent?
Well, I was gonna make a call to find out.
Okay, make that call.
I was going to make a call to find out exactly
what I am
what.
Experiencing roadblock after roadblock after roadblock on me trying to get started and getting new books out. Any book out. Every single thing. I have 5 new children books I've written, and Bluehost is now holding me ransom because I moved over to Squarespace. I can't do email. Every single time I turn around, there's something else going on me, and I'm worn out. That's why I've been sick. I can't get anything done.
I was on the phone with Joey last night. I was able to get.
No clue what I'm at war with. And all I want to do is.
I was on the phone with Joey last. I was on the phone with Joey last night, just trying to make one call and stay on with him, and we were disconnected a whole bunch of times, and we couldn't figure out exactly what was going on. Literally, many times, at least 5 times.
I don't want to complain, and I don't want to be negative. I'm telling you, there is something out there that does not want me to do what I want to do, which is simple. And I don't think that I'm not a blue state or a red state. I'm not a this or a that. By the way, Joey, thank you for that wonderful synopsis thing. I'm getting feedback from a lot of people that, want, they approve or agree or in some ways allowed what I'm trying to do, but it's not being done. And like my school wanted to open. And the first thing I'm going to do is teach children how to grow food, because if they're at home, they need to play in a sandbox and be educated. And so I'm going to teach.
Yes, this is Grace in Oklahoma. Hi there.
Who?
Grace just called into the farmhouse. I think she's talking with Mrs. Finelli about.
Good. I told Julie to call Grace to let you guys know that we're not being on the air. How does that work? Or at least down in Oklahoma.
Well, I'm looking at TalkStream Live right now, which is an indicator of how many people are listening. And according to TalkStream Live, we're doing really well. I mean,
okay, well,
really well.
Let's go forward.
I don't know the answer.
The school itself is basically going to try to teach children that metaphysics is going to teach children how to survive on their own growing food as the first lesson they're going to learn. That's what I want to do. We've already made the videos. I wanted to open tomorrow morning. Registration already is open for business, and they took my website down. And that's it. So there's no way to register. It doesn't matter. I've still made them as videos. They will be available. And what I'm doing, we did a step by step on how to build a simple aquaculture closed system for, the cave, outer space, or your home in Paris, like I use in Arapaho. It's a missile silo, and for less than $200. And that closed system, fired up, will grow twice. I've got plants growing next to it in normal plant, and then I have the hydroponic one. And you'll watch the difference in terms of being able to control salts into your nutrients and the kinds of lights that you use. And that's what I want children to say, why you do it this way over that way. And that's the first class I'm teaching. It'll be 8 weeks. And over an 8-week period, we'll watch the different tomatoes side by side, how they grow, how basil grows, how orange mint grows as a crop. And I want people to understand that when you understand the nutrient, I went down to...
Hey, hold that thought. We're going into a break. Hold that thought. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us because I've got a little update on what's happening with being able to listen to us on the internet. It's down. And I know it's a problem because we've gotten phone calls at the farmhouse asking about it. Rick has them. Rick's gotten calls. And I'm looking at the call screen, to take telephone calls and put them on the air. And I can see that the call screen is lit up with listening to the broadcast. So the call screen says, here's a guy who's listening to USA Prepares. Don't put him on the air. He's just listening. So it's real. And it's bigger than our engineer Jason can fix. So GCN is working on repairing this problem right now. So it's real.
But it didn't allow me to present what I needed to present for help. And that is what I have been encountering. Vincent, it's every day across the board in everything.
Oh, just try to just
quarantine falsely. Right on down the line, I just got out of quarantine, and there's nothing wrong with that. Oh man, I am.
Now, who put you in quarantine, Rick? Was it your doctor?
EMT,
through one of those?
It was an EMT, and then his boss and his boss's boss called later to make sure damage control, and I wasn't going to press suit. But it happened.
Rick, it's happening all over the country to lots of people. There are people who are, let's say in the seed department of a store, let's say a big box store, and they can't sell seeds because it's not essential. That's unbelievable.
Here's another one. I went down to the co-op with a explicit need. I needed 2 bags of da-da-da, and the person that came to help me was an old, knows her store really well, and yet I knew more about what I needed than she did in terms of I need the nitrogen phosphorus count to be bought. I found what I needed, but she couldn't help me. And once she did, she was sitting there taking notes as she was learning her own business from me. Now, that's crazy. I'm not a horticulturist. I'm not a rose man. I don't do orchids. But I know more about how to do it than they do. How's that?
How is it?
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. I just want to quit.
Well, don't quit. I was at Home Depot a couple of years ago, and there was this guy with this orange smock, and orange is the color of Home Depot, so I was in the plumbing department, and there was this guy, and he offered to help me, and I asked him where a specific valve was, and he had no clue, and he told me that, well, he was really filling in the plumbing department, and that's why he didn't know. But he normally is in the lawn and garden department, and I could ask him any question about lawn and garden, and he would have the answer, because he knew about lawn and garden. And I said, oh, okay. So what are those, those 3 numbers on fertilizer? I said, Eric, what are those 3 numbers?
Nitrogen, phosphorus. Yeah, right.
Well, that's what I asked him. I didn't say that. I said, but what are those 3 numbers? Like 10, 10, 10, 5, 10, 5?
No, 3, 1, 4, or something like that. Yeah, okay. No.
Yeah, what do they mean, Eric? And he mumbled and he got it wrong. And I said, Eric, that's 2. That's 2 you got wrong. 1, you don't know anything about plumbing, and 2, you don't know anything about your department. It's okay. I'm from corporate headquarters. I've got your name, and I've written it down.
You're from corporate.
Yeah. So, Rick, it's we're all experiencing this. Yesterday, Sam's Club sent me a survey. They want to know how they were doing. And, from 0 to 10, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And then they want an explanation. And I said, it used to sell appliances, and they were outstanding. They were great values. You used to have knowledgeable salespeople. You used to have people in the tire and battery department who knew what they were talking about. No longer do you have that. So I don't buy batteries from you guys. I don't buy tires from you guys. I don't buy appliances from you guys. I don't buy a lot of things from you guys because you don't have knowledgeable people. And especially in the electronics department, you guys don't know what you're doing. So I sent that survey back, and they had the gall to say to me at the end of the survey that if we want to contact you, would that be okay? So what they're telling me is they're absolutely in charge. I despise what Sam's Club has been. And you have to pay to be a member of Sam's Club. Now, Home Depot, you don't have to pay to be abused by Home Depot. But you do have to pay either $35 or $100 a year to be abused by Sam's Club. Sam's Club will let you put things in your shopping cart. They will let you check out, and then they will let you, they'll assign a time to you, and then you go there, and they may or may not have what you want. How about that? So in this response to Sam's Club, this survey, I said, you guys are selling things you don't have. And you take things out of my shopping cart. That's what you guys do. And please remind me, why am I paying for this? Why am I paying $100 a year? So, Rick, it's everywhere. And we need to teach our children at Albert Schweitzer University that this is not acceptable. This is a breach of trust. This is unethical.
I agree in all of this. It's important that these children get a good education. And homeschooling aside, I think it's important that they need to learn how to get along together. That's why public schools were so important. Not for the social cliques that form, but how to avoid them. When I went to college, I was never a frat. I was independent that was married. And so I lived in a section set off for campus, near campus, that was for married couples. I was married all the way through school. And in graduate school, I had my first child. And so first and only child. I'm worn out. I've got a lot more to say in the future, and I don't know what to do about. Okay, I'll put it this way. When I did Nikola Tesla, I studied Tesla. Tesla is known for his electrostatic field studies and to use certain kinds of bandwidths of electricity that could be carried through the air via certain bandwidths. And yet, he and Wilhelm Reich and others are only known for those two things, like Bob Marshall, buckyballs, but they had 12 or 20 things they actually did that were genius. And what I'm concerned about for May is it's going to happen the same way for May. I have all of these unpublished manuscripts that my daughter isn't going to know a clue about what to do when I'm dead. And they're going to get lost with all the rest of it. And what I've done, seriously, are treasures beyond measure that will never, ever. I did things on sound and light. There's 3 books, The Diamond Body, Electromagic, and Yogatronics, studies with the military on how to evoke neurotransmitters in your brain without having to use drugs. Using visual exercises, that kind of thing. I did a scientific study on it, and this is how you do it. So you don't need to take mushrooms to have that neurotransmitter look-alike chemistry, talk to a dialogue to subtle body outside the physical body. I did where's that material ever going to go? And what about resonant cavity oscillators and how you dialogue from one subsystem to another? I did a whole book on that. That could include mycorrhizae as well as your gut. Giving you a way to look at the way communication goes from one subsystem to the next. Do you know that dolphins are not using language like man does? They're using holographic images or sending pictures. Did you realize that a picture is 1,000 words? That means that they are in a level of communication beyond that of man. Yeah, I'm trying to say something here. I've done some important studies that will never happen because of your so-called, you know what the cabal is? I'm writing that now because there's a concern about me being associated with black magic. Well, first and foremost, that are these little subgroups, someone with a lot of money, that when I was a young kid, I tried swingers. I liked sex. I didn't think much about it. I did it. And what happened was there was this old lady that wanted to punish her husband in front of him by having sex with some young athlete. That's why I don't do swingers anymore. Mostly it's people that are sick that need to do something that is not biblically of a moral value. And I grew up by making that mistake once and not making it a second time. And that's why I've become a moral man rather than an ethical man. I've now learned my rules of the road, and now I'm too old to do anything about it. What I want to do is at least try to give that knowledge base of all of that as a foundation for a gifted child that's got its own direction and moves. And I'm frustrated.
You're talking about something
any better.
You're talking about something as simple as an oscillator, and you mentioned a resonant cavity oscillator. When we start teaching our students, our children, about oscillators, there are so many uses for them, and one of them, of course, is converting current from, let's say, direct current to alternating current. And alternating current travels farther with less wasted energy than direct current does. You need much heavier cables. I just published a paper on Facebook of using light to move objects. That's a new technology, just came out. I posted that on Facebook this morning. How to use light, not sound. Now, sound, I went to Tibet and I saw these Buddhists, they use these great big long horns. They're like alpine horns, deep resonant value, a low frequency. And when you put 19 of them in a certain geometric array, it so compresses the air that large, heavy objects begin to float, and you can push them with a finger. Now, that's a technology that we used in previous epochs to build things like the pyramids, probably. They weren't built by aliens. They're probably built by men in a different universe where the laws of physics were different. And the thing is, they exist today, and there's an example of it, and that's a technology. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us, and we're talking about Albert Schweitzer University. Rick has founded this university, and it's for children. And there are a number of us who are going to be teaching children how to do things a little differently.
By the way, I'm so blessed that you would like to be our headmaster. I am blessed. Thank you for doing this, Vincent. Thank you.
When you say headmaster, you're talking about head knocker?
No, that's a good place to start. You're going to be our image. You're going to be the one that's the spokesperson. You're going to be, I'm just one instructor. You have the bigger view, maybe, of why we're going to teach martial arts to children.
Well, you mentioned that's what you're talking about. Public school, and you're talking about homeschooling, and how do you socialize children who are homeschooled? Well, it's easy. You bring them to martial arts classes. But I wanted to tell you a couple quick things. My dad was he was trained as a teacher and as a scientist, and he was also a musician. And he had an elementary school. And he thought it was absolutely crazy. His first school, when he was a teacher first, then he was a teaching principal. So he was a principal of a school and the teacher at the same school, and then he became a principal of a school. And his first school that he was a principal at was an elementary school. And he decided that grades, having children in grades in his school, was crazy. He thought that children should be grouped not by how many days they have been alive on the planet, but by how much they knew and how they learned. So he took all the grades out and grouped students by how they learned and how much they knew. And it worked really, really well. And I remember that when he would review the lesson plans, he required all his teachers to have lesson plans at least a month out, meaning if they ever became ill, that a substitute could come in, look at the lesson plan, and continue without missing a step. He required that. And he reviewed all of the lesson plans himself. He read every single one. He didn't delegate it. He did it. And when it came time to buying books for the library for the school, he would instruct the teachers that they could pick whatever books they wanted from these lists of books. And then he would review the books to see if he thought that they fit within the school's educational plan. And then when the books came in, he would review the books physically to make sure that the content was appropriate and in sync with the school's plan for education. And one of the things that he bought, because he was a scientist, he bought a kit that showed fractional distillation. And this kit explained how crude oil was heated, and at different boiling points, different materials would come out. And there were these physical samples in these plastic containers of gasoline, kerosene, motor oil, fuel oil, and very light oils. So you could actually see on the column of the distiller what temperatures each one of these products that was from crude oil resulted. And it was fabulous. And where is that today? Where is that kind of instruction today? I don't think there is any instruction like that today. And I believe that is one of the kinds of things that we want to do with Albert Schweitzer University. And I believe that we are not going to have grades per se. I believe we're going to have something like my dad did, based on your level of interest, based on your learning styles. You will be in taking classes in accordance with that. Isn't that correct, Rick?
I hope that's why I wanted you to do this, not me. You have a better concept, and that's what it's going to evolve. And
I would like to say
your concept, and then allow it to evolve to what it should be. And I don't have that answer, and you don't have that answer. The child does.
I would like to see us bring back a science fair.
Oh, yes.
In some way. And let me give you an example.
You're getting me excited for you being, this is exciting. This would be fun.
All right. Well, you were talking about light. And Rick, I'm interested in everything. I really am. I get distracted by things that that capture my interest. Well, in seventh grade, in elementary school, I attended an elementary school. I was not homeschooled. But there was a science fair, so I participated in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade.
This is exciting.
in each of those grades, I won first prize. And I was competing with children whose parents worked for companies like Bell Laboratories. And so it was not an easy competition. And I want to tell you a little bit about one of the things that I built, because you were talking about light. And I think this kind of resonates with where we can go with Albert Schweitzer University. And so Dr. Richard Allen Miller and I'll be back, right after these top of the hour announcements, news, and commercials. And I'll tell you about one of the projects that I built in 7th grade. And it was all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and we're talking about children, and we're talking about education, and we're talking about the Albert Schweitzer University. It'll be an online university for children to learn things that, they just flat out weren't taught in school. And I wanted to mention, Rick was talking about light, and it reminded me back in 7th grade of the science fair at the elementary school I attended, and I built a device that would allow the human voice to be transmitted over a distance on a beam of light. And so what I did was I took a beam of light and I modulated the human voice over it. And I'll explain exactly what this was. It was very, very simple. Remember, I was in 7th grade, so it had to be pretty simple. And so what I did was I took 2 amplifiers and a photocell and a parabolic reflector and an incandescent light bulb. So think of it like a flashlight, let's say a D-cell flashlight of the 1960s vintage. And you know that a flashlight would, the parabolic reflector would reflect that light from the light bulb in the flashlight head at a distance. You could focus that, and that's what I did. I focused the light beam, and I transmitted it over a short distance. And to power the light bulb, I used direct current, battery-powered, and an amplifier. And I had a microphone. I transmitted the audio signal, modulated audio, sound waves, into a wavelength, or a series of wavelengths, amplitude modulation. Went into the amplifier. That signal was increased enough to power the incandescent light bulb, which was reflected downstream to a solar cell, or a photocell at the time, and that was the input to another amplifier. And that amplifier took the signal from the photocell, which was the modulated voice, carried on a beam of light, and it was hooked up to a speaker. And you could listen to the audio being transmitted at a distance from a microphone through an amplifier on a beam of light, picked up by a photocell, amplified so that you could hear it, and played through a speaker. It was as simple as that. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all this is I believe that those are the kinds of things that we should be teaching at Albert Schweitzer University. Where else is that taught? Have you heard of a science fair that did anything like that today? I'd love to hear about it, because I don't believe there is such a thing in today's world. Okay? Another thing that I built in 6th grade was an analog computer. Now, it was primitive. It would only add, subtract, multiply, or divide 2 numbers at a time. But it worked. And it was analog. It was not digital. It was analog. And I built another science fair project. I built more science fair projects than there were contests. Another one was a capacity-operated relay. And this was a device that, as you came close to it, it would recognize that you were there. You could call it a proximity detector in today's vernacular. So as you approach this thing, it would sense the capacity of your body relative to your body not being there before. It would sense it, and it would throw a relay. And that relay could ring an alarm, turn on a light bulb, do whatever you wanted it to do. There's a switch. It would sense without stepping on it, without pressure, just the capacity of your body being near it it could sense that. Another thing I built was a lie detector. Literally a lie detector. And what this thing would do, it was an amplifier. It was a millivolt amplifier that would measure the resistance of your body from one fingertip on one hand to the corresponding fingertip on the other hand. And it would measure the galvanic rate at which your body would change based on if you had a heightened sense of alarm, meaning you were going to be telling a lie. And it would swing the meter on an analog volt-ohm-meter to tell when you were lying. And it absolutely positively worked. Like around 87.5% of the time it was accurate.
What
and
years?
Then, this is in the early 60s.
Like 64?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 60, 64, 65, 66 maybe. And then I built an ion rocket. And an ion rocket had no moving parts except for the switch. And really what it was a high voltage transformer that would carry a high voltage current small amount of current, but high voltage, into a tube. Actually, there are 3 tubes, and the tubes contained a ball of copper at one end, a copper wire like 12 gauge, and the other end of the wire was sharpened to like a pencil point. And what would happen is the ions would collect at the ball, and they would fill up that space in the ball of copper, run down this copper wire, and get flown out the point. And it would literally project this rocket, which was on a pendulum, like a swing. It would move it forward a little bit. And then you'd release the current, and it would swing back to the neutral position. Then you'd engage the current like you would on a swing set, and you could make this thing swing with no moving parts. So those are some really cool things that we could teach our children at the university how to do, and let their curiosity carry them further. And that's what this is all about. That's what learning about fractional distillation, that's physics. Learning about heat and light. Learning about how the body works with its electrical responses, galvanic responses. Learning about ions, things that you can't see, but you can measure. Of course, aquaponics, hydroponics, and your experiment now, Rick, with plants and looking at the external forces on plants.
I got hired by the city of Chattanooga to offer 7 workshops over a 2-month period with Michael Moore filming it. And what happened was that I taught how to farm food and how to produce locally, so that at the end of that year, Chattanooga went from producing 3% of their food up to 40%. Their logo for the Chamber of Commerce was right here, right now. And they had a greenhouse next to every single restaurant on the Chattanooga River, and the downtown, the center of town, was converted into a farmer's co-op garden open to the public every day with a stock exchange. And the stock exchange was on what products were in surplus that week, like tomatoes, onion, potato, whatever. So the extra deals going on. And that's the lesson I want to teach a child first, how to produce their own food at home, right here, right now. And once they've got that, then I want to teach them the second lesson is whether or not that water is potable or drinkable, and if it is not, how do they clean it? And if I do those 2 single goals, that is, in fact, the foundation of metaphysics, something that goes beyond the physical. Meta means beyond. So metaphysics means beyond the physical world. And that concept of empowerment is never really actually taught in public schools. And that's where I want to start my lessons. And, it isn't necessarily the correct one, but if I can give that child empowerment for surviving water and food, now they're talking about that asteroid that's going to come near Earth that's full of cyanide, and that's air. So those are the elements that the child's going to need how to learn to survive as basic foundation before they even start with their new math, or what they called it, this new math. This new math, there's an article in the paper that has said that the children now are failing mathematics because of the concept of new math. I don't know about that. I know that I was doing integral variables when I was still in high school. I know that in second grade, I learned and studied Latin, which allowed me to go into horticulture simply. I know that nothing like that's being taught in schools today. And that is what I want to do is offer an idea I was a gifted child. I'm going to tell you what a gifted child wants. It wants a good comic book, and it does not need hero archetypes. That's what our comics do. And that's why there's a distinction between certain kinds of comics, like Son of Satan, which is an excellent comic. He was the Son of Satan, and that was one of my best and most favorite. So was Warlock, dealing with, and Doctor Strange. And then moved to Doc Savage. And not Doctor Who, but Doc Savage. He was a really good comic. And then Constantine with Hellblazer Comics. I can tell you that the children today want magic. They don't need adenocortisone, chromosome. They don't need any of that kind of stuff. What they need is the concept of it's all possible. Here's your playground. Show me what you want to do. And then learn from the children where you need to go.
I believe what you're saying, Rick, is that gifted children want to be challenged.
Well, they're all gifted. See, that's the deal. They're gifted. There are many different kinds of intelligence, and we've only focused on one or two. And yet, an artist, right and left brain, science and religion as a metaphor. It's like everybody is uniquely different. That's because we were given choice and became God's favored in that regard. And once you get that, the child is normalized. That was what made me uniquely different than most other children was. I somehow was unmanageable. I wouldn't go there. I kept where I wanted to be. And because of that, I'm considered intelligent, but I'm not. It's interesting, and I know the difference. And I want to go back to where I was, and I want my children and my grandchildren, and I've got a great-grandchild now. I want them to have that choice and not necessarily be me. I don't know.
We're talking about Albert Schweitzer University and some of our philosophies that will be implemented. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, I'm a little stunned. I'm looking at our rankings. Something has happened. It looks like there's a lot of interest in this topic because this topic has propelled USA Prepares from junior varsity into the varsity league. I'm very serious about that. I'm looking at right now, and this is not to brag, this is just to tell you that there's interest in this. We are ahead of ESPN, WABC Radio, 1010 WINS News All the Time, Morning Edition, The Dave Ramsey Show, Bill Handel on the Law, 560 KSFO, Howie Carr, Dom Giordano, and Larry Elder. We are now in the big league, just below MSNBC, CNN Live, Dennis Prager, just below those guys. Rick, this is pretty serious where we are with Albert Schweitzer University. This is telling us that there's interest in what we're talking about. So this was the breakthrough, into the varsity league for USA.
What this does, Vincent, is it takes this negative BS of this virus and shows that everything happens for a reason and everything leads to something better. And we take the spin of this as an advantage and change those aspects like Chattanooga. Everyone listening to me right now most likely produces less than 5% of the food they consume. Even the farmer gets his food elsewhere. And because of the isolation and because of the need now to be more rigorous in where our different things come from, there is going to be an immediate need for a better source of food. And what better time to show our children that need and see what they come up with as a solution. Not what I think it should be, but what they show me. And I'm guessing that is one of the very positive things that could come out of what we've all just experienced. And that's how we give it back to the rightful owners, our children. I have on right now a T-shirt, black, that says, I am a political atheist. For me, I don't understand politics. I don't understand. I've been in a war room. I actually have been in a war room. And I can tell you, imagine what they're doing right now in that war room, trying to take the spin of what's going on and your depression and using it as a control fantasy, thinking they can shape the way we think and want to behave. Good luck with that.
So when we go into the classroom, this virtual classroom, this online classroom, Rick, can you describe what your classroom will be like for the children?
I'm taking them outside in a movie that we've made, and I grab a piece of plastic pipe, and I show you how it's connected to that piece of plastic pipe to make this little engine pump that water through this little hole to feed the plants. And then I'm going to take the old-fashioned way of growing a tomato alongside it. And let's see what happens next. I'm going to be Mr. Wizard.
And
I'm going
will you be having?
It's a nice day in the neighborhood. Would you like to be my neighbor?
Mm-hmm. And will you be providing let's say a list so that you can follow along at home and do this in your home? And how much it should cost? I'm going to not only show that, I'm going to show it doesn't work right. I can't make it fit. What do I do now? Mm-hmm. And show how I jury-rig something so that it will work. That's what farmers do. We'll be right back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So we're talking about Albert Schweitzer University. This is something that Dr. Richard Allen Miller is putting forth for the world to participate in. Rick, how do you envision children determining which classes they would like to participate in? Is it a la carte, or is there a curriculum through which the children will progress at their own speed?
Moment, I don't know. What I'm doing now is the first class to see what they want from that and what they didn't want from that. I'm going to let the children show me where I go. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing is time flies. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it like I would have liked to have had it done for me. The problem is, when I got to that stage of awareness, I may have already been too late. And so what I'm going to do is do the best I can and listen to you.
Oh, you don't want to listen to me.
Well, I'm trying to say something. I'm going in as a start point, not an end point. I don't have the answer. The child does. And I'm going to go in. It isn't going to be like Cloud Atlas, but that's where I would like it to go eventually, where the child tells me we did that at Evergreen. Evergreen, we started at the University of Washington, and then when Dixie Lee Ray left the Atomic Energy Commission and became governor of the state of Washington, we started with Evergreen College, which is now a university. And the students chose non-disciplinary background courses that they wanted. And that's why not only did I teach parapsychology, I taught shamanism and witchcraft. Believe that or not, I taught witchcraft at Evergreen as a very popular course. At the same time, Arguella, one floor above me, was teaching mandalas. Now, mandala effect is different than mandalas. And mandalas are sacred geometry. That's where it all started, was at Evergreen. And we let the students pick their disciplines and requirements to take. If they wanted to go into physics, they chose what they wanted. Some wanted cross-disciplinary. That's something else that we experimented with that uses the cross-disciplinary for degrees in areas that the university is inequipped to do. So they go into different departments and have experts review the thesis. And I was participating in that as well with such things as Sona, using sacred geometry for healing of the body, which has now led to, Steamboat's the Healing Center and some other things out of Reno. I have no idea where this is going to go. That is going to be dictated by the children themselves. I'm going to start with food.
So
that's what the virus said.
When we talk about food, climate is involved in that for much of our food, at least outside growing food. And the hottest years on record are 2016, 2019, 2015, and this is an order of hottest years. So the hottest was 2016, then 19, then 15, then 17, 18, 14, 10, 13, 5, and 9. But there's other things
going on here. Like, we have fear of GMO. Now, GMO is a slang word for cultivar, something that develops in a given region. And that's why most likely Gurdjieff said you should eat your environment. As a philosophical point, dealing with people that live on the coast eat fish, and people that live in the Midlands eat grain. And each universe is going to dictate a different curriculum. And that's what I'm sensing. It's going to be habitat sensitive, and the children in the Midwest are going to be quite different than the children on the coast. I don't know.
And where I was going with this is, will we be teaching a class in meteorology? I think that'd be great if we taught our children how to look at the weather.
Hear about magic. Why? Walt Disney?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I found that Gen X are way more interested in radio. The Gen X generations want to hear about magic and the occult, whereas the millennials want to hear more about the difference between law enforcement and blah, 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 whereas the baby boomers want to talk about civil rights and things of that nature. Every generation is different, and the universe is changing. Is it changing for the better or for the worse? And the correct answer to that one is yes, all of the above. So I have no idea where this is going to go, and I'm going to try to do it like I did when I was a child, where I'm going to allow imagination to be part of the curriculum. And where do you want to go? What is interest to you? Is it that worm, or is it that amoeba? What level are you interested in? Why? And I'll bet you I'm going to learn more than the child is. That's what you get. Well,
children ask questions that don't have the same boundaries that adults have.
Well, then that's why we did that show 5 years ago or whatever. I need copies of all of that because that is another excuse and foundation for the college, a university. Children ask the darndest questions. When they did it on your show with Grace Thorne and Missy, I have to say something. That was exceptional. And the kid will always remember that lesson in his later life. It will have an immense effect on him. And imagine if we have a university where the child gets to say what he wants to study. My guess is there will be a lot of people that will try to confuse us with the cabal and the drinking of blood and the creepiness of Christianity. Because when Isaac Bonwitz wrote the book Real Magic from Berkeley and his study at Berkeley, he had a chapter called White Magic, Black Magic, and Living Color. Now, which one's real? Is the boogeyman real under that bed, or is it just the child's imagination? And the correct answer on that one is also yes. Belief systems are exceptionally important and should not be main drivers. They should be used as tools in a toolbox. And we allow absolutes to conflict with variables. My daughter, I used to have that. I love this. I hate that. And I would rather have her say, I prefer this over that. That's the difference between Eastern and Western thought. And they're both correct. And they both open different doors.
I used to ask our daughter when she was very, very young, would you prefer milk or water? She would say, orange juice. That's what you're talking about. Rick, how many times have you been in, as a student, in class and had questions that your instructor flat out could not answer?
Is
that pretty often?
Since second grade, sir. I have that on my report card. Ricky, quote, is very disruptive. He asks too many questions. That's literally on my report card. In fourth grade.
Well, I'm behind you.
In fourth grade, they discovered I couldn't even read English. And fifth grade, they wanted to put me on meds. And then on sixth grade, they wanted to advance me in school. And I'll tell you what, my mother wouldn't let them do any of it. And now I'm the monster I am. I'm so grateful.
Well, I'm behind you. I'm behind you, Rick, literally behind you, because my fourth grade report card says what your third grade report card says. So
I didn't even read English. I was asking the questions for criminy sake. This is nuts.
Well,
and what they do in school is nuts. And while there are good teachers out there, how come they're not being paid like a lawyer or a medical doctor that is using, say something is broken? Medicine is broken. My teeth, my dentist is broken. They're not fixing things with root canals. What is going on is about, like the difference between a prison and a penitentiary. Why would they want to rehabilitate somebody, penitentiary, when they could keep the money rolling? Prison. It goes downhill from there. And that's why there's a distinction and a need for prison reform. Because everything now is broken. And so this is an opportunity, not a bad thing, but potentially a good thing. And it's time we all start to say so and make those changes. It's inevitable. We can't keep going on with Teamsters and longshoremen. That's the mafia. So what do we do now? Well,
I've been using the wrong term.
Your own self-preservation. Produce your own food. You don't need someone else. That's a good place to start.
Well, it works right here. It works right here at our farm. It's really nice. Yeah, class, you can't imagine how neat it is to, in the summer, I can finish the broadcast at 11 o'clock. I can go out to the garden. I can pick some tomatoes, get some extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of Mediterranean salt, and grind up some pepper, and get some basil out of the garden, get some bell peppers, and some jalapenos.
I saw that movie. It was called The Sopranos. Good work.
Well,
I saw that TV show. Listen, it's time for change.
Well, and I'd put them over a small plate of cold pasta. So the extra virgin olive oil, and add a little bit of apple cider vinegar on it. So apple cider vinegar, a little bit of Mediterranean sea salt, grind on some peppercorns, some peppers, green peppers, jalapenos, tomatoes, bell peppers, cut them up, of course, wash them all, and that's lunch. What a great lunch, right from the garden. And the only things that would be purchased would be the plate, the knife, the pepper, and the salt. And you can eliminate the pepper and the salt if you want to, and the extra virgin olive oil, but it sure is good. So I'm going to experiment with that again this year, except I'm going to substitute avocado oil for extra virgin olive oil and see how it goes. So what we're talking about is, yes, you can take control of your own destiny. You can let your children think out of the box instead of slam them into the box and close the box. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, class, and if you'd like to learn more about what we're talking about, you can go to richardallenmiller.com, richardallenmiller.com. And what we're talking about is teaching our children to think differently, to think in such a way that they aren't programmed to be part of the herd, to think that they can do better, that they can innovate, that they can engineer, that they can fabricate, that they can create, they can teach others, they can lead. That's what we're talking about doing. And we're talking about showing them by example how some things work that maybe they don't know about, that they haven't been exposed to, and letting them take it from there through experimentation. And the reason I mentioned the science fairs of the 1960s that I participated in was to show you that your imagination can take you places where you might not have thought of going. And that with a little bit of challenging, and what would that be? That would be like the teacher saying that there's going to be a science fair and that you can compete and you can be judged based on your merits. That's what it was. And we can do the same thing with Schweitzer University. You can learn, you can expand, you can learn more than your teachers. Wouldn't that be neat? And how often does that happen in reality? Well, I think it happened with every single USA Prepares instructor. I think all of the instructors have learned more about more than their teachers. Rick, would you say that that is reasonably accurate?
I think that a teacher, or I did when I taught graduate level demonology at Georgetown University, I learned more than the students did. They brought me in as an expert in old magic systems and where the demons are. And if you don't think, I've discovered that all the different demons in history came from Babylonian star maps. And what I did is I updated their movement in space that creates sigils or their name, like Enoch said. Now, if you don't think those graduate students didn't grab their pens quick to get what I saw, when they were doing that, I also discovered something about Jesuits. And it was really an interesting exchange. How's that one for a metaphor?
Well, I spent...
I used to go... They took me to the cellar a little place, and you have to go downstairs. It's a bar. I was the only Caucasian in that place at the time, and there's the MJQ playing jazz, and out walked Nina Simone. I saw it, I experienced it, and they felt gratitude to blow my mind like I was blowing theirs. Now, welcome to Baracha, honey. I have no idea where this is going to go, but it's just like in the Indiana Jones movie where she comes out on stage and she sings, anything goes.
Rick, so let's extrapolate this out into the future. So let's say that one of our students has applied for a position with a corporation, and that our student is sitting across from the interviewer who has control over the decision whether that student will be hired or not hired. So on the vitae, on the resume, on the experience profile is included a student at Albert Schweitzer University from the beginning year through the end year on the resume. What do you think would happen to that student during that interview with the person conducting the interview seeing that this candidate for employment has been a student at Albert Schweitzer University?
By that moment, that year in life, it'll be about divine right in terms of what corporations exist and whom they use as interviewers. Trust me, the world is going to change from what you think it was to what it's going to become. And in terms of competition, it won't even be about that. It'll be about divine right on who is where.
So I kind of thought it might be something like this. I was in a fraternity.
The ones that go over the edge or the other ones?
Well, this was at the time. It was the largest fraternity in probably in the world. No, Tau Kappa Epsilon.
Okay, I was Sigma. Oh, okay,
At the time, it was very large, and I was president of the fraternity at that time. And I've never mentioned that, but anyway, I was wondering if you thought that our candidate would be like the fraternity brother being interviewed by another fraternity brother, and the fraternity brother interviewing and say, "Wow, this is great. I'm so glad to see that you're a candidate." And I thought that the same thing might happen with Albert Schweitzer University.
I don't think it's going to be about merit. It's going to be about divine right. And divine right is I can do it, and what can you do?
Yeah. We're at